work at the Learning and Development Department of the RIPE NCC. I'm going to talk about anti-abuse training. That's one of the functions that we have as Network Coordination Center, and that is sharing information and best practices and skills to every network operator within our service region in order to facilitate the coordination of these networks. As you know, the internet only exists because all the different networks are able to work together and play together in a nice way. And that's why we have anti-abuse efforts. So abuse is nothing new. If we look back in 1989, there was already an RFC being published, RFC 1087, where somebody was already asking, okay, when do we define abuse on the internet? When is the use of the internet still ethical? And the Internet Activities Board published an RFC on this topic. What they said back then was that it was unethical and unacceptable when somebody was trying to gain unauthorized access to a network, disrupting the intended use, wasting resources, people, capacity, equipment, destroying the integrity of the computer-based information, or compromising the users of the internet. So all these things were back in 1989, but how do we think about them today? Do these definitions still stand strong? Do we still think that this is the concept of abuse? Now, it's difficult to define abuse because it depends a lot on, for example, your national legislation. In some countries, certain things are not considered abuse, while in other countries, they are penalized by the law. Your cultural background, your personal point of view, your experience, expertise, and of course, opinion. Now, you should probably ask yourself, what are the main characteristics of abuse? And the thing is, some people say, okay, I know abuse when I see it, right? But abuse will actually be defined by the victim of the abuse. They know when they're being abused, and they will tell you so. Whoever's receiving the abuse will clearly identify it as the abuse when they suffer the consequences. Today, we know a lot of types of abuse on the internet. For example, spam. Everybody loves spam. The general fraud attacks, denial of service attacks, malware, phishing, abusing an open email or DNS service, copyright infringements. That's more, not so much abuse on a network, but it's defined as abuse because there is a legal or financial consequence to it. And of course, child sexual abuse material. Now, this isn't seen as abuse per se, but it is really important to take this into account because it has legal implications if you don't take care of these complaints.
The last one, in fact, I must say, from my perspective as a telco, if I get even expired requests from police or something like that, I just respond.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I don't care that I break the law. For example,
that's why it's on the list. It's because it's really, really important that you deal with it. So some of these things don't have so much priority or urgency, but that one, yes. So the effects of abuse on the internet, it's like a ticking time bomb. You know, it causes networks to go down, downtime. Damage on them. Businesses will lose business when they can't operate, for example, for a denial of service attack. People might suffer the consequences. Imagine a hospital network being the victim of a denial of service attack. People might be depending on these hospital services. Trust in your network is eroded when it becomes unreliable because, okay, you know, you have abuse attacks coming out from your network. People start saying, hey, that network, dirty, don't like it. You know, start filtering it. Your internal costs will increase because you're going to have to look where these problems are happening and solve them one by one. And you have, of course, the legal risks. Not dealing with abuse on time can bring legal problems. And who wants to pay a lawyer to work all day solving your problems, right? So this is a downward spiral. When there's abuse on their network, your IPs and domains will be marked as dirty. You all have heard about IP block lists. domain block lists, reputation lists. The problem of not dealing with abuse is that you can expect your IPs and domains to get a dirty reputation or a bad reputation, and this can result in decreased traffic. It can get worse when you are landing on a block list. That means that your IPs and domains are marked as do not go there, and that means no traffic. And then the struggle is real, because getting your IPs or domains off of a block list requires a lot of work, having to contact the block list, finding all the different block lists around the world where you're listed, and trying to get them off. So it's a lot of work. Now, what should you do about it? I say here, what should I do about it? But I'm not a network operator, so I'm going to ask you, what should you do about it? There are expectations and obligations. There are lots of people who are expecting you to do something. Now, my question to you is, what are your expectations when you send an abuse report to a network? What do you expect from them? It's a rhetorical question, but you can give an answer.
Well, I'm receiving such a request, and then I can tell you what I do as, well, my telco colleague, let's say. We just forward that to the sales to contact the customer that they have a problem, that it requires a fix, and then they can agree on some kind of issue resolving, or just a technical support if it's not a business customer but B2C, and they just ask or help the customer to upgrade the router to remove some issues, or at least inform. But very often we talk to the wall.
Yeah, sometimes you talk to the wall, but at least you take action, and that's the first step to doing something. Now, but it's not only you who might have expectations, there's a lot of other people around there who have expectations. The first one being the abuse victims. So the abuse victims, they expect the abuse to stop immediately. They expect to be heard, listened, acknowledged, know I have a problem, do something about it. And they expect network operators to be ethical and responsible, and that's what it's about on the internet. This is a shared space. That's a very modern term, right? Shared space where the bicycles and people and cars all go together. The internet is the same thing. It's a shared space. And so you should be ethical and responsible with what happens in the public space. Your local authorities are going to expect something from you as well. There are probably local laws and regulations that require you to do something about it. They expect you to put obstacles to abuse and cybercrime. Don't make it easier for them. And they expect you to help in creating a safer information society. That's where we live in today. And I can give you one example of local authorities and their laws. For example, in Germany, access ISPs are legally required to inform their customers if they receive an abuse complaint from anybody. So if I'm a German ISP, and I get an abuse complaint, I am required by law to tell my customer that I got that. So it's just not, they can't just get it and say, okay, I'll deal with it and not let the customer know. They have to tell them. If the customer has, for example, an old version of PHP which is being abused, and they have to update their website, it's the responsibility of ISP to tell them, you have to fix this. And otherwise, the ISP gets the problem, not so much the customer.
Yeah. You have to have at least a proof that you have informed customer about the problem.
Yes.
Okay. But quite important step.
Yeah. So documenting, maybe it's bureaucracy, but it's good because the customer can say, oh, I didn't know anything about it. And the ISP can say, oh, I was too busy, I didn't tell them. The law requires you, so make some time and do it. And of course, the internet community expects you to do something about it. The abuse from your network is causing damage. It's causing network operations to be degraded or disrupted. How many times have we been trying to load something on our phone or computer or whatever, and it's, oh, that network connection, oh, that sucks. How do you know if it's the ISP's problem and not something happening on the internet, an abuse situation, which the ISP can't control? So other people on the internet expect you to deal with those issues so that the internet works as it's expected. And lots of networks might have financial losses or costs. A customer who has a Nestlé 24/7 uptime, you know it's not true, right? It's 99.99999%. But imagine that because somebody's abusing the network, their uptime is 98%. That's already a reason for financial losses. They might come and say, you know what, you owe me because you don't give me 99%. They want you to take care of the vulnerabilities and exploits that might be on your network. Old software, customers running services which are not totally verified, stuff like that, open services. They want you to deal with the abusive users. They want you to be ethical toward other networks and, of course, towards your customers. So why handling abuse is important? Because cybercrime is on the rise, and cyber criminals use your network as part of their infrastructure. And that means that they get financial benefits while you're the one paying the bills. So the consequences of not handling abuse reports is that loss of trust in your network will happen. That network is not reliable. They don't do things with their abuse reports. Reduced network visibility due to filtering. You land on a blocked list, it means your network will be less reachable. And of course, serious legal problems in certain situations if you don't deal with it. Now, I've talked about the doom and hell, what happens when you don't deal with abuse, but there are also good sides, there's benefits. For example, more stable network operations or uptime when you deal with abuse on your network. Better visibility of your network on the internet, reduced operational costs. When you don't have to be solving all these fires all the time in your network, it means that that money can go somewhere else. You don't have to invest in having to put somebody to fix those problems. And improved business due to a good reputation. Being stable and that people know about it brings more customers. As it says here, I'm going to use the laser for that. Clean, efficient networks means happy users that don't leave. And what you want to do is, of course, keep your customers with you. So having said all that, and I hope I've motivated you some way, let's talk about the solution to this. What can you do about it? Besides putting somebody or just getting a network engineer to solve the problem every time there's an email coming in. You want to streamline this process. So you want to probably set up what's called an abuse desk. And an abuse desk is simply a place that receives all these kinds of reports, abuse reports, from the outside, from the inside, from different sources, and does something about it. It's usually parts of the security operations function. So some people see it as a help desk. Well, it's not a help desk. This is not customer care. This is your own network care, taking care of your network. And ensures that the complaints about IPs or domains are taken care of. So basically, you have a series of information sources, being it abuse reports or other types of external sources. They will be compiled into abuse reports, processed by the automated, notice that I said automated, abuse management system, with human analysts that monitor and improve anything that the automated system does. And then this results in an action or response, which can be either shutting down the customer, sending a notification, maybe even contacting the law enforcement agencies. Well, I don't think that the system should do that on its own, but forwarding a message, for example, to your legal department that they should contact the law enforcement agencies. So what does an abuse desk do? It simply receives and catalogs the abuse reports from all over the place. Prioritizes the reports that require urgent action. Like we talked at the list of different abuse situations, there are certain types of abuse which require immediate action. And the abuse desk helps you to see that. And then it'll take action depending on the issue, mitigating the impact of the abuse. If there's a spam run happening on your network because there is some kind of open service or something like that, you'll want to shut down that service and mitigate the effects of this. Educating your customers on how to avoid these issues. How many times, I don't know how many of you here have customers with hosting or something like that. They run their own software. Sometimes you have to be checking what software are they running and tell them, You should probably update your PHP, Drupal upload. I don't know if there's a new version or something. Any CMS that you're running, keep your software up to date, educate your users so that these situations don't happen. Shut them off from the internet if that's the only solution. Somebody hosting malware, for example, and you tell them, let's get rid of this, stop whatever folder you're sharing, but they do it again, or they allow it to happen again. So maybe the only solution you have at that time is to shut them off completely. And if you are required by law, contact the LEAs in certain situations. Where is the abuse desk found? Well, it looks like a help desk, we said, because, okay, it's getting reports and it has to do something with the customers, maybe not. But it's mostly found under information security. So in the InfoSec department, you'll probably have the abuse desk there. They will have a lot of contact with information security, but also with the legal department, because there might be incidents where they have to talk to the lawyers as soon as possible in order to make sure that the company doesn't go into a legal situation. Do you need to hire a network engineer for the abuse desk? No, not really. We talked about the automated system, and you don't need to have somebody really highly skilled. They do need some skills that help them to do the job, to understand what they're doing, but you don't need to hire a network engineer. Skills that can benefit the abuse desk operator are, for example, IP addressing. They should know IPv4, they should know IPv6, subnetting. Basic understanding of the technologies used in the network. They're not supposed to fix the problem, but maybe understand where the problem might be in order to help guide the process. Reading log files. That's something that's very, very useful for the abuse desk. IP packet analysis and among other things. And basically, soft skills are really important. How do you talk to a customer so that they don't get angry with you, thinking that you're pointing the finger? So providing these skills to the abuse desk operator or worker is really beneficial for them and for the abuse desk in general. To set up an abuse desk, there is no guidebook or rule book or definitive process. There are certain principles that you can follow that help you to set up the abuse desk in your own, to your own comfort, to your own situation. There is the abuse handling process, and it's really short. And that's because speed is the most important factor. You want to get rid of the abuse as soon as possible. Now, the process has 4 steps. It's the inbound data, so getting your signals from outside, from inside. Where is the abuse? Is there abuse happening? Where is it happening? Processing this data, so making sense of it. How many reports do we have? Do they all come from the same? Then handling this process is setting priorities. What should we tackle first? If we get 100 abuse reports in a day, I hope nobody gets that, but suppose you get 100 reports, what should you tackle first? Which one is most important? And then, of course, taking action. What do you do to solve that problem? Do you shut them off? Do you send them a message? What do you do? Now let's look at each of these steps in little detail so that you can get more of an idea. The inbound data can come from several different sources. The most common of them is the abuse at mailbox. You all have an abuse at mailbox, right? You have IP addresses, you have an abuse at mailbox. There's a policy, a right policy that says every holder of IP addresses must report an abuse mailbox where abuse about that IP address can be reported.
And the RIPE was screaming, "You're not reading your abuse mailbox."
We don't scream, we send an email screaming.
Yeah. And we say, "Oh, Andrew abuse is not working here anymore."
He don't live here no more. Sorry. So, abuse mailbox. Everybody has them. You also have them, I think, for domains. When you register domains, there should also be an abuse place. Everybody wants to put a mailbox where you can report the abuse. You might have internal sources, like your IPS or IDS. Threat intelligence, like, for example, all these websites that gather reputation about IPs. What's the name? There's a Cisco one. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Sorry? It starts with T. It's escaping my mind now.
T-virus.
Yes, that one.
He's a Cisco guy.
So threat intelligence, and of course other external services, like for example, Spamhaus or Shadow Server or any kind of database like that. So when you're looking at the inbound data, what you have to do is evaluate it and ask yourself, do I have all the information that I need? Is the abuse report complete? Just getting an email saying, stop sending me spam, I don't like your messages, that's not enough. What do you need in that case to be able to solve that problem? Maybe the whole message with the headers, that's useful, right? To know from which IP address it's coming, what type of trick they did to pass the spam filters and stuff like that. So we should check, is your abuse report, is the data there complete? And what you want to probably do is standardize your abuse reports, because this helps with the automation and it makes abuse handling much easier if you have a standardized report. One of the most popular standards out there is XARF, which stands for Extended Abuse Report Format. And you can look at it here in this GitHub. It's open source, so you can use it without any licensing issues. It's simple, extensible, structured, and it's, of course, as you can see, easily to automate. You can process this with any kind of system. So standardize your abuse reports. In the processing, this is where you make sense of the information that you're receiving. So you want to see how much work do you have. The first step is to make the link between the events of a certain resource and link it to its end user. Who do you have to contact in order to solve this abuse problem? And also aggregating all the different incidents that are happening so that you know if they're all coming from the same IP, if you have different customers that need to be approached, how much work do you have? For example, if you get 15,000 complaints, but they're all for only 5 of your end users, if you only have 5 customers causing the problem, well, okay, it's only 5 users, I don't have that much workload, because you only have to approach 5 of them. If you get 15,000 complaints and therefore 1,000 of your customers, you have a lot more work to do. So gather all the reports, use an abuse management tool, for example, because the computer can help you do all that repetitive work much faster and easier than having somebody manually do it. It can catalog and classify the incidents, correlate the abuse reports with already open cases. How many times has this customer been the center of attention? And of course, send notifications about incidents. So having a system do this for you is what makes the abuse desk so interesting and actually efficient. Having somebody doing it manually will require somebody who's really disciplined and does not get bored with repetitive tasks. Linking the resources to end users is another part of this process. You want to be able to know who to talk to in order to send a message, which email address, which phone number, which post address, whatever. And having an IPAM tool helps to resolve the domain and IP address to this. How many of you use an IPAM? No? No? How do you register your IP usage? Spreadsheet? Okay, I'll leave that there. No IPAM service software?
We have some internal database of addresses, which...
That's your IPAM, yeah. So your IP address management, some people use a spreadsheet as an IPAM, but that's not really an IPAM. After the processing, you start the handling, prioritizing what goes first and what must go second. For example, if you get 25,000 spam reports, that's much more than 1,000 spam reports, quantities. If you get 25,000 from one customer and 1,000 from another, you want to handle the 25,000 complaints before the 1,000 complaints. So that's the first priority. Then the type of event that is happening, spam versus phishing versus DDoS, which one is more important? Which one would you tackle first? So you would probably prioritize DDoS over spam. And then you might want to prioritize based on your own particular situation. Some issue types might be more urgent for you because local legislation. I'm not familiar with Polish law, but there might be some things that are more urgent for you to handle than other things because the Polish law might come in strong on you. And then some sources of reports might be more important for you. So if you get, for example, 3 reports from Spamhaus, and it's your policy that Spamhaus reports have more priority than outside reports, then you'll probably prioritize those over all the other reports coming in. So how urgent is it? In this at this moment in the process, you will set the priorities and the process for the different types of abuse. You would probably create a table like this, the issue type, the urgency indicator, and then the process to follow, what to do. You need to have that thought out beforehand. You don't come up to a situation and decide on the spot, okay, I'm going to send an email to this person because I saw some images on that file, on their shared folder that shouldn't be there, right? If it's this case, you immediately shut that down, you contact the legal offices, you have a whole process already thought out. You don't think of it at the moment. And unfortunately, some incidents cannot be automated. Sometimes there will be an incident which will require human intervention, and you have to be prepared for that as well. That's why you have also the human analyst at the abuse desk taking care of these situations. But the long-term goal at the end is to automate as much as possible. Have the abuse desk running like a machine, processing these things and keeping it registered for you. In the end, what you want to do is, of course, remediation, mitigation, stop something, solve an issue. How to solve the issue will depend on the root cause of the issue and what is your environment like. What should you take into consideration? Which actions can you take to solve this issue without completely shutting down the end user? In the end, there are customers, they're paying for a service. We don't want to shut them down, but sometimes it's necessary. We try not to reach that point, but in the end, it's of course what we're trying to reach. Mitigation, remediation, stopping the abuse. Now, how do we know if our abuse desk is successful? Well, of course, this is different than putting out a fire. When you have a fire, you come with the water or the hose or the fire extinguisher, you put it out, there's no more fire. But in the case of abuse on the internet, we cannot see the effects of this immediately. Yes, if there's a DDoS attack and we shut down all the servers or customers which are sending out packages from the DDoS attack, we might see it. But in other cases, we don't see the effects of our work right away. But what you want to do is probably measure the success. Start with a first measurement. How many abuse reports did you get from the moment you set up the abuse desk? How many were you getting? Keep daily, weekly, monthly statistics. How many reports came in? How much action did you have to take? How many customers had to be contacted? And then, of course, compare the statistics over time, see how many reports you're getting now. Is your abuse desk having any effect at all? It's important to keep track of this because then you can see if your work is having effect or not, if you have to take any actions to change what you've set up. Now, we talked about automation and all of that stuff, so I'm going to talk to you about some tools and services that are there that can help you to set up your abuse desk and set up automation. So automation, like I said, it saves time. You let the computer do the grunt work, all the repetitive tasks, keeping registers and stuff like that. And there's lots of software that can help you do all this, collecting the reports, aggregating, cross-referencing with other data to see how many times this customer has caused a problem. And of course, taking actions to solve simple issues. Sending out an email saying you need to update your PHP or something like that. You can automate that. You can let the computer do that for you. For those of you looking for an IPAM, maybe not your own database, but some software that can help you with the automation, there's all kinds of tools out there. You have free and you have paid. And the good thing about an IP address management tool is that allows you to link the IP address or the resource with the contact details of an end user and keep references of these types of things. So if you don't have an IPAM, we do really recommend you to look into one, or at least some kind of software that can interact with the abuse management tool. Unfortunately, there isn't much of a variety of abuse management software out there. We have here 2 examples, which are the only 2 that I could actually find. One of them is open source, and it's abuse.io. It looks a bit like this. It's open source, so you can actually download it and customize it for your own needs. And of course, it's free. A paid option would be Abuse HQ. This is software as a service. So a company runs that abuse management software, and they do all the maintenance. So all you have to do is let it do its job and interface with it whenever manual intervention is required. Another thing that you could probably do besides automation is keeping up your knowledge. There's a lot of sources of data out there that you probably want to be in touch with. For example, the best common practices. There's a RIPE document, RIPE 409, which helps in setting up good practices in minimizing email abuse. How can you avoid spam and that type of stuff? Connecting with other abuse desks, like you come here to the NOGs to talk to a lot of network operators, send your abuse desk people to the place where the anti-abuse working group meets. This is a really, really, really large working group, the M3AAWG. They talk everything that has to do with anti-abuse and abuse in general. And keep up to date with the latest developments. Know what's happening out there, what types of attacks. Is your network ready to fight off that type of attack? Stuff like that. Staying up to date is one of the best ways to deal with abuse in a way. More sources of data that you can look for are, for example, Abuse IP database. This is a database where people are registering IP addresses or domains that have been reported to be a source of abuse. The Telos, that's the one, thank you for reminding me, Telos IP and Domain Reputation Center. It's another source of information you might want to check out. Shadow Server, SpamCop. If you know any more of these data sources, do let us know, contact us, and we'll keep adding it to the list. The more people know about these data sources, the better. And of course, participate in the community. If you are not part of the anti-abuse working group, at least sign up to know what's going on, because that's where all the discussions in the RIPE community happen about anti-abuse efforts. This anti-abuse training that we do was an initiative of the anti-abuse working group. They decided there's a lot of new operators out there on the internet, and they don't know about what they should do in the case of abuse. So let's help to create a training, and let's share the information and best practices so that the internet remains a stable place. It's a place where you can discuss and share information and help to produce and update the best common practice documents, and either get or give advice on anti-abuse matters. So if you want to know about the anti-abuse working group, this is the link. And now what? Well, it's a call to action. For those of you that don't have an abuse desk, the next steps to follow are prepare your inbound data sources. You have your abuse mailbox probably already set up. See about getting other external sources where you can get information. Set up your IPAM and abuse management tool. This might take some time, but in the end, when it's automated, you will reap the benefits. Set priorities for the different possible incidents that you might have. Set up procedures. What should happen when this situation arises so that the abuse desk knows what to do. And set up, of course, your metrics and statistics and start handling those abuse reports. Are there any questions?